My videos are made freely available to those of us who are tired of believing in things that insult our own intelligence, and those that instead wants to know the true intelligent reasons of our plight and condition. Within this video, you will learn the true reason why many Black people now thinks in ways that places the interests of the white society above our own interests. Critically think. Have you ever wondered how is it possible that so many Black people now reveres the white society in spite of such a brutally horrific history of the contrary? It is a profound contradiction. Throughout history, the white society has demonstrated a total disregard for the lives of Black people. Their subjugation, murder, and brutal exploitation of Black people throughout history is unparalleled. Against Black people, the white society has committed mass murder at almost genocidal proportions. And Black people have received, by the hands of the white society, the most cruelest enslavement in world history. Yet, in spite of this brutally horrific history of the contrary, millions of Black people now revere Caucasians and insist that it's ourselves that are now our worst enemies. Many Black people now even insist that we should try to be more like Caucasians, in spite of how terribly they've mistreated us throughout history. When looking objectively at the facts as they truly are, it becomes clear to see that millions of Black people are not functioning based upon an accurate interpretation of the true history shared between our racial group and Caucasians. It literally appears as if millions of Black people are suffering from a form of collective amnesia. Some of us have frustratingly and short-sightedly stated that the reason for this profound contradiction is because Black people are foolish or too forgiving or too forgetful. Millions of Black people are insisting that it's because of the Willie Lynch slave syndrome. That silly, feeble-minded myth presents what would in fact be the least effective method used for controlling generations of millions of people. It's simply not how true brainwashing is achieved. Absolutely not. True brainwashing requires a system wherein which the programming is being constantly reinforced and reapplied upon the targeted population in order for it to remain effective. Therefore, to believe that we're being controlled by the Willie Lynch slave syndrome myth, a person would have to be totally ignorant of how true brainwashing is actually achieved, because that's not how it works. None of those noted beliefs and premises are true. We must gain a clear and accurate and concise understanding of our collective condition in order to liberate ourselves. Because if our understandings of our condition are flawed, then all of our liberating remedies, strategies, and solutions that stem from those misunderstandings will also be flawed. This is why those of us who know the truth must teach African proverb. The true reason why millions of Black people now reveres Caucasians in spite of such a brutally horrific history of the contrary is because Black people are not functioning based upon an accurate interpretation of the true history shared between our racial group and the white society. Black people are instead functioning based upon the white society's monopoly over the input of contents that are being systematically fed into our collective minds. The white society has exploited its monopoly over what's fed into our minds to give themselves a favorable image makeover within the collective minds of millions of Black people. This is all possible because all you have to do is keep repeatedly feeding selected information to a targeted population, and you can persuade an entire generation towards an applied objective. The human mind is like a computer. No matter how efficient it may be, its reliability is only as great as the information that are being fed into it. If it's possible to control the information that a targeted population receives, it's entirely possible to control what they'll believe. It doesn't matter if the information repetitively fed into the targeted population's minds is untrue. Most will act accordingly to the information because they've all been given the same information. Regardless of how intelligent many may be, it's entirely possible to control what they will think. White oppressive forces exploited their monopoly over the input of information that are fed into the minds of Black people to manipulate us to think in ways that places the interest of the white society above our own. We've been programmed to think in ways benefiting the white society. People function based upon the education they're taught, the books they read, and the movies and TV shows that they watch. Because the white society controls the education we're taught, the TVs and movie shows that we watch, they've secretly exploited these factors to give themselves a favorable image makeover within the collective minds of the Black masses. The education we're taught has been whitewashed to make the white villains throughout history appear as having been the heroes throughout history. It has also been whitewashed to make them appear as having been less immoral and more humane and more relevant throughout history than they truly in fact were. We are therefore now perceiving them based upon that whitewashed version of history instead of the true history that demonstrates the people they truly in fact are. The second reason why many Black people now reveres Caucasians in spite of such a brutally horrific history of the contrary is also because we're constantly seeing them being depicted in movies and TV shows as white saviors and heroes, righting all wrongs and defending the weak. Most people think that movies are made for nothing more than entertainment. This has never been the case. The greatest social messages are promoted through movies, through films, because it's TV and movies. Social norms promoted through films can influence the way of thinking and the cognitive map of a populated audience. You see, in a normal conversation, when you're using logic, in fact, your guard is naturally up, you know. But when you're watching a movie or TV, there's no debate. Your guard is down. The censor part of your brain is not in action. It isn't saying, yes, I agree with this or I disagree with that, as you would when you're in a debate or a conversation. You're actually in an alpha state, being totally, completely open and downloaded with ideas and images from the film. The movie industry has been used to give the oppressors an accurate, favorable image makeover within the minds of millions of Black people. When you're watching movies, our guards are down and we're within an alpha state, being completely suggestible to subliminal programming through what we're watching when we think we're just being entertained. This media subliminal programming system is also the true reason why millions of Black people now reveres Caucasians in spite of a brutally horrific history of the contrary. If you doubt what I'm disclosing here, it's because either you're not critically thinking based upon facts as they truly are, or perhaps your ignorance of this system of control prevents you from understanding it. Therefore, let us look objectively at the facts as they truly are. We can all agree that millions of Black people now thinks in ways that places the interests of the white society above our own interests. We agree this is happening. Whenever the oppressed starts thinking in ways that are beneficial to their oppressors, it's always by deliberate design. It's always because they have been socialized to do so. There are 4 ways to effectively socialize an entire generation of people: by what they're taught, by what they see, by what they hear, and through repetition. Because the white society controls the education we're taught, the media images that we see, and the societal narratives that we repetitively hear, these combined factors allow the white society to socialize the minds of millions of Black people to think in ways that are beneficial to the white society. Regardless of how intelligent people are, if it's possible to control the input of information that are fed into the minds of people, it's entirely possible to control what people will believe. This is the truth of our plight and condition. Black people have been socialized by the white society. This is how they control what we think and they control what we behave, because our behaviors align with our beliefs. I'm telling you we've been socialized, but I didn't explain to you what socialized is. Sorry for that. Socialized is when the dominant culture exploits its monopoly over the information that are systematically and repetitively fed into the collective minds of the oppressed to manipulate the oppressed to think and behave in ways that are beneficial to the oppressors. Black people have been socialized by white social scientists and white propagandists to think and behave in ways that serve and protects the interests of the white society. And the reason why most black people are unaware of this fact that we've been socialized is because people that have been socialized rarely, if ever, learns of this fact. But it's an absolute true and well-proven social engineering science that's been deployed against the black population. The truth of our plight and condition. Given the white society's long history of discrimination, oppression, and brutal exploitation of black people, to not have socialized the collective minds of black people to think in ways that prevents massive black retribution and rebellion would have been against the interests of the white society. Because whenever people are oppressed for long durations, their collective aggressions against their oppressors will continue to grow until it reaches a boiling point, resulting in massive acts of rebellion against their oppressors. The oppressed always eventually rebels against their oppressors. This is an inherent fact. This is an inherent response within the collective human psyche whenever people are being oppressed for long durations. The white society prevents this inherent response from occurring among the black masses by socializing the minds of black people to think in ways that keep our collective aggressions shifted away from the white society and keeping it redirected towards ourselves. It's how the white society secretly protects itself from massive unified black retribution. Welcome to the real world. There are a lot of propagandists feeding lots of disinformation to our community to keep our mind distracted and dumbed down from seeing the truth, because they know as long as they keep our understandings of our plight and conditions flawed, then all of our liberating strategies will also be flawed. Now, I know when I'm speaking, there's a lot of videos out there, a lot of things saying all this different disinformation, but I want you to listen to what I presented to you. Look at it while critically thinking. I make my case by presenting facts, and don't dispute facts for false beliefs you've been misled to believe, because doing so will keep you mentally enslaved and oppressed by the white society. The truth is the white society exploits its monopoly over information that we receive to manipulate our minds to think in ways that serves and protects the interests of the white society. It's how they prevent the unprecedented unified black protest of the 1960s from ever happening again. We're being constantly manipulated. We're being constantly manipulated to think negatively of ourselves and favorably of the white society. It's being deployed through subliminal programming all the time. From the education we're taught, the news reports we watch, there's a subliminal message being telling us to revere whites and to hate ourselves. Subliminal messages are programs that are designed to bypass the conscious mind, but becomes embedded inside the subconscious mind. It is why many black people now speak negatively of our own race. It's why many black people, they're programmed to always speak negatively about our race. Brothers and sisters, it's time to wake up to our reality. One love and peace.